First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thank you for joining us. We are continuing our coverage here of the trial going on in downtown Portland in district court regarding the legality of sending National Guard troops into the city of Portland. This is the state of Oregon, the state of California, the city of Portland against the Trump administration and the federal government. Both sides coming from different viewpoints on this. And this is a potentially three-day trial that's happening right now. And joining us, who's been covering this here all day and far beyond that, I'm sure, we have Spencer Schacht here with us. And Spencer, thanks for being here. This trial has just gotten started really here at 9 or so this morning, and it already feels like so much has gone on. There is a lot that's just been happening here in this very beginning of it. But to start off, would you mind, just for everybody who may be just catching up to everything, could you give us just a brief recap of where we're at right now and maybe just a couple of the big things that have come out?
Yeah, definitely, Greg. So this morning, like you said, it was a jam-packed morning. A lot of the witnesses called first by the state and the city of Portland, who are the prosecutors or the plaintiffs in this case. They have been calling folks who work for PPB. They're calling PPB commanders and officers who have been on the ground outside the ICE facility in the last couple of months leading up to President Trump calling for the National Guard to be issued. And really, the case that the plaintiffs are trying to make here is that the National Guard is not needed in Portland. They're trying to say it is unconstitutional to bring in the military into a U.S. city to turn it against U.S. citizens who are just trying to protest and practice their First Amendment rights. But on the flip side of this, the federal government is saying that the protesters have been outside that ICE facility so consistently, so often, that it has escalated to the point from a protest up into a riot or even a rebellion. They say because it has crossed that threshold, the president has every right to call the National Guard in to Portland and into these cities to help protect federal buildings and help the understaffed federal resources that we see trying to protect these federal buildings. So we have the ICE facility that a lot of is really the crux of what these protests are. A lot of the messaging that you see outside the ICE facility is people just saying ICE out of Portland. They don't want to see immigration and customs enforcement here in Portland. They don't want to see their neighbors arrested, so they are protesting that activity, the deportation, the due process, all of that. But the federal government is saying that this is a direct attack on the Trump administration and that it should be bring in the National Guard to try to quell the situation and kind of quell that rebellion. So those are the two sides of the argument that we're hearing so far. But one of the really interesting parts that we heard in today's trial actually happened before opening statements got started. I believe we have a graphic for this, but it was a conversation between Judge Immergut, who's presiding over this case, and one of the defense attorneys representing the federal government. She was asking if they violated the temporary restraining order that she issued on October 4th. So Judge Immergut asked the defense on October 5th from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m., were there troops deployed? And did the National Guard deploy to the ICE building? The defense attorney said, yes, troops arrived around 11 p.m. and completed their shift at 2 a.m. Judge Immergut said, we will discuss later if this is contempt in violation of her temporary restraining order. So that was kind of how the day got started, and then it has been a lot of testimony from PPB officials since then.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth, a lot of information coming from PPB officials about their standpoint and their viewpoint on a lot of that. And, when it comes to that, what you just mentioned there, though, the National Guard did deploy for, it sounds like 2 hours down there on October 5th. And from what I understand, I'm just going to ask you, just to be frank, I don't remember ever hearing anything about that happening or any reports on that. Do you recall anything along those lines of that happening?
No, I don't recall it. We never saw any troops on the ground. Granted, it was overnight
Yeah.
12 a.m. to 2 a.m., a time where our field crews weren't necessarily on the ground out there. But from that conversation, from that back and forth, it sounds like the guard was deployed inside the building. I don't know if they actually made it out. So it would be interesting
Gotcha.
to see how far of a discussion that this goes of, is it a violation to move troops into a federal building? Because we've had this discussion before through Ezra's and Adrian's reporting of trying to track the troops of where they are in Oregon after they've been federalized. We've seen them at Camp Withacombe, we've seen them at Camp Rylea, and it is within the National Guard's, they are allowed to move their troops around from camp to camp, but it is that question of, is it a violation of the TRO to move those troops from a camp into a federal building once they've been federalized?
Yes, it will be. I'm very curious to find out more information on that too. It sounds like the judge is going to circle back to that, at least based on what she was saying, or her brief statement there seems like she is going to come back around to that. But yeah, did this mean that they, how many troops, where were they, all of that? But regardless, so that was for that 2 hours. And then, yeah, some other the key things that are coming out, just the standpoints, again, of the Portland Police Bureau, largely being, and there's a lot of testimony here that's gone on so far, and more is happening right now, but largely seeming to be that they don't feel that the protests were up to the level of needing the National Guard to come in. That seems to be the Portland Police Bureau's stance, at least from the testimony that we have heard. Obviously, the federal government disagrees with that. But it is really interesting hearing some of these voices of the people, who have been down there, and hearing these two different sides on the situation. The federal government's going to have their chance to say everything, too. This is just how the trial starts off. The plaintiff's going first and calling their own witnesses. So, but some cross-examination has occurred on that. And so for now, I guess, for where we're at right now, the court's back in session. It sounds like we may anticipate another recess before 5 o'clock. Do you think, from what you've heard, that there will be one?
Yeah, so they went back in, they had their lunch break at 1, they went back into session at 1:50, and they've just been going strong since 1:50. We have not heard about them calling any recess or going into a break anytime. In my experience in covering federal court cases or court cases that go all day, they usually tend to take a 5-10 minute break around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So hopefully we'll hear some more information this afternoon before we go into our evening shows, but it would not be unusual if they went all the way right up to 5 o'clock or right up to 4 o'clock.
Gotcha. Yeah, and recess, not a recession. It's been a long day of covering this, so excuse me for my slip up there. Hope everybody can forgive me on that one. But yeah, so we'll see what else happens. And just for information for everybody too, while they're in session, you cannot report on what's being said. So whatever's been going on there since 1:50. We'll find out. We've got our reporters in there, and it's when they go into recess that you can report that information. So that's when we'll be able to get some more for you. But still a lot to digest even so far. We're just getting started on this as we go through here. Well, Spencer, anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Yeah, just that the main part of the testimony that we've seen today so far this morning was from PPB officers, commanders, and the main point that they were really hammering home as the plaintiffs was the information that they are getting from the federal agents from inside the ICE building is very different from what PPB is seeing when they actually arrive on the scene. One instance was the Federal Protection Services called for backup, called for PPB, saying they were being barricaded in their building, protesters were lighting fires, lives were being threatened, and then when PPB showed up on scene, there was no fires, there were no barricades, and it was protesters holding rocks and signs and canisters. And so it is really interesting to hear what is being the perspective from the federal officers versus the perspective of the local officers.
Yeah, these very, very different perspectives on what is going on there and what has been happening and some of the different occurrences as well. So we'll take a look through some of this. And again, like I mentioned, once we find out more, once the court does go into recess, or if it goes all the way to 5, then we'll have a whole lot more information. And Spencer's been following this the whole time, along with our team there, to bring you this info as soon as we get it. So Spencer, thank you so much for your summation of just all these things that are going on and analysis on what is happening here. So really appreciate it. I'll let you get back to it. Looks like traffic's getting busier out there, but just
it is that time of day.
It is that time of day. So we'll keep plugging along.
Greg.
And yeah, thanks, Spencer. Appreciate it. We'll let Spencer go back there to monitoring what is going on. And again, we are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. I do think that I want to emphasize we're live. So this is, if it's your first time watching Fox 12 now, we get to have these longer form discussions, and we've been having them all day long, taking a look at what is going on there with this court case, also following along with the Ninth Circuit Court, which we know that en banc is going to be happening there. If you saw my previous interview, we went through that with a professor from Portland State University of just how that works and what to expect from there, where for a lot of these, kind of waiting for the judges. It's the judge's decision on how long things go, when things are put into action. So we're kind of waiting on that one regarding the temporary restraining order. Right now, we're following along with this. So I'm going to check here with my team. I'm just going to take a really quick break. You're going to see a slate that'll come up here for a second. You'll see a Fox 12 Now logo. Don't go anywhere. That just means I'm checking here to make sure if we have our guests. So I will be right back. All right, well, it looks like we had a little bit of an issue there. We were going to have another guest, but we will come back another time with that guest. We have plenty of things, though, for you to watch if you want some more analysis of this, if you want to go through some of these details of what has happened, what we've learned from this trial so far. There's a lot. I mentioned it started at 9, but there are pages and pages and pages of testimony so far. Hearing from mostly the Portland Police Bureau, from what we've heard so far, their standpoint, and then some of that cross-examination from the federal government, the Trump administration as well. So plenty for you to look at. I don't know where you're watching us right now, wherever it is. I thank you for doing so. I want to remind you that you can download the Fox 12 Oregon apps. That's a great way to follow along, and that way we can bring you live information as it happens. So Fox 12 Now runs between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. outside of our other newscasts. And this is where we can have longer form conversations. We can get into things a little bit more, and that's what we've been doing here for over 2 hours now. We've been covering a lot of this. And we're not going to stop, obviously. At 4 o'clock, we will have plenty more for you as well. Spencer will be down there. Our whole team is covering this throughout the evening. So a lot more information to find out. They've been in there. This has been going since the last recess ended at 1:50. So this is coming up on an hour and a half that they've been in there so far. So that's a whole lot, I'm sure, of testimony to go through. If they do have a break between now and 4 p.m., I'll be back and I will have that for you. We'll break it down. We'll let you know some of the different things that were said. And in the meantime, we're going to take a break. So I encourage you to go to kptv.com as well. You can go there and read up on everything that we've covered. And we'll be updating that live as well. A lot happening here. It's a lot to break down, and that's why I'm appreciative of having our experts on here to do that for you and me, for all of us, to break that down. So thanks for being here. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox